Hello and welcome to the France 24 interview. My guest today is Mikhail Khodorkovsky. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you.
You were, for a while, Russia's richest man. You were at the helm of the giant oil company Yukos. You were one of the so-called Russian oligarchs. You were able to make money very quickly after the collapse of the Soviet Union. But then things changed when you started to express your opinions, criticize the regime. In 2003, you were arrested. You were tried and charged for tax fraud and embezzlement in what the Western world and many human rights groups deemed as politically motivated trial. You spent 10 years behind bars until you were pardoned in late 2003. The assumption that was that you would stay away from Russia and stay away from politics. Stay away from Russia you did, because you spent time in Switzerland and now you live in London. But stay away from politics you did not. You've expressed your opinions repeatedly, criticized the regime of Vladimir Putin. You're here in Brussels at the European Parliament for an initiative to foster a dialogue between Russia and Europe under the banner of the Boris Nemtsov Forum. Boris Nemtsov, of course, an opposition leader who was killed recently in Moscow. Mr. Khodorkovsky, I want to ask you first of all about Donald Trump. He was elected, to the surprise of many, as President of the United States. During the campaign, he talked a lot about Vladimir Putin. He said he was a better leader than Barack Obama. He promised that he would reestablish good relations with Russia. So my question is very simple. Do you think Donald Trump's election is a victory for Vladimir Putin?
Во всяком случае, Путин внутри России пытается
Putin within Russia has been trying for all this election campaign to establish a situation that President-elect Trump is his person in Washington, D.C. And Trump's victory means that the Kremlin will be able to control Washington, D.C. practically as the Kremlin controls certain satellite states. But we all understand that the reality is far from that. This is just a PR campaign, which may affect the Russian population, but not all of it. But those who understand how the political system in the US functions, this is just nonsense. And I believe that certain changes in the relations between the US and Russia will take place. But President-elect Trump, he is a person who sticks to traditional values in certain sense, and so he'll see very soon that his values and those of Vladimir Putin are different very much.
So you don't believe those who say there will be a realignment of US-Russian interest in places like the Ukraine, in Syria, or more broadly? So in another way, do you think Vladimir Putin will be disappointed in Donald Trump fairly soon?
Well, I'm pretty certain that Vladimir Putin sooner or later will be disappointed. Of course, he'll try to keep face, but I'm pretty sure that the dynamics of the relationship will be similar to that while George W. Bush was the president. First, he saw something in the eye of President Putin, something beautiful, but then he actually realized that he had been mistaken.
So you've called for a regime change in Russia, essentially. You have your foundation called Open Russia. You're launching a variety of projects to kind of create a future administration of Russia instead of Putin is your latest initiative. Do you really believe that Vladimir Putin's time is not indefinite? It seems from the West, maybe, that he is firmly in power and for a long, long while. You disagree?
Я готов поверить, что где-нибудь в ваших лабораториях уже разработан эликсир вечной жизни.
I'm sure that perhaps this elixir of eternal life has been already designed in your secret labs, but we ordinary citizens don't know. We know for a fact that sooner or later ordinary mortals die. And at a certain age, it's really a mission impossible to be the only owner and leader of a huge country, which actually is not controlled that much by him even at this juncture. But he is really trying to be at the very top of this shaky pyramid. Well, should he lose his grip, the pyramid will collapse under him. So, and my prediction is that Putin is not a stupid man, so he won't be waiting for that long and he'll step aside. However, he will try to replace himself with his successor. But unfortunately, and here I would like to underscore the word unfortunately, the problem of any authoritarian regime is this inability to transfer power, especially in this person-based regime that has been built by Vladimir Putin.
So you're saying that Vladimir Putin's regime is more fragile than we see it?
Во-первых, он гораздо более
Well, it's much more fragile, that's for sure. And what is more, it's less governed, and Putin doesn't actually control the processes within the country. I've said it on several occasions. When it comes to the situation within Russia, there is no economic vertical. It's a myth. There is a group of people in the Kremlin who have been stealing everything they can, and there are other groups in the regions who are trying to grab whatever they can afford to grab. Between them, there is this huge country named Russia, which is self-governed, not efficiently, not effectively, because there is no well-governed state and an independent court, independent parliament, local authorities. They have been deteriorated and disintegrated. As a result, despite its huge mineral wealth and its well-educated population, the economic growth in Russia has been very pathetic, and the living standards are not improving.
So you see a transition. Do you think it will be a smooth transition, or it will be maybe bumpy, maybe violent transition in Russia?
I don't envisage any civil war in Russia. Although some revolutionary changes, in other words, the changes that would imply foregoing the current system of laws, I think it will be pretty smooth. This change will go through a constitutional council. And it's really important that at this constitutional council, which will be gathered once the regime collapses, they will be able to design new rules of the game and design a new political system so that authoritarian regime would not be able to resurrect, although in a different shape and with different people. Unfortunately,
Including you?
the Constitutional Council will it include me, or will it be headed by me, or by the movement that I head? Well, my objective, the objective of my work, is to make certain that at this Constitutional Council we'd be able to represent the interests of the urban, educated class in Russia. Because right now it's not the majority in our country, but it's the most active segment of the Russian population and of the Russian society.
Mr. Khodorkovsky, you spent 10 years behind bars. They've been Russian opponents or former oligarchs who fell out of favor, who died. Boris Berezovsky, Alexander Litvinenko. I'm not going to cite all of them. Last December, Russia charged you with the murder of a mayor back in 1998. Have there been attempts on your life, and are you scared that Russia might act in a violent way against you because of what you're saying and what you're calling for in your country?
Я ожидаю от Владимира
Well, when it comes to Vladimir Putin and his cronies,
осложнить жизнь мне и моим.
I wouldn't be surprised if he makes it difficult for both me and my followers. Sometimes people who are close to me, they are searched, they are arrested, they are called to the Prosecutor General's office. Well, this is life for you. Who said that it's really easy to debate with autocrats? It's never been easy. Perhaps in Russia it's even a bit better than in countries with a similar regime. I'm not that much concerned for my life. Perhaps, first of all, because I'm well known as a personal opponent to Mr. Putin, and he understands that should he issue an order, it would be immediately crystal clear where this order comes from. It would be difficult, and it would be not the same as with Mr. Nemtsov, because at the beginning we were still guessing who was the instigator of his murder, although now we seem to know.
Who?
Well, I say that we know, but it doesn't mean that I'm ready to prove this at court. This is a person who is very close to Mr. Kadyrov. Mr. Kadyrov knows him very well.
The Chechen leader.
Putin knows. The Chechensky leader. Putin knows who this man was. And Putin deliberately prohibited the investigation committee to touch this person. As a result, this trial is just a fictitious trial, because there are executors, but there are no people who were behind this crime.
So you're implying that the order to kill Boris Nemtsov probably came from the Kremlin?
No, let me reiterate. I know that this order was issued by somebody who is very close to Mr. Kadyrov, and I'm convinced, although I cannot prove it now. And my suspicion is that these people believed that they were working in the interests of the Kremlin. Did somebody among the people close to President Putin know about it? Well, I believe that yes, and I think that I know the last name of that person.
But you're not willing to tell it?
No, I can't, because I cannot prove it.
Just two last question. Russia announced that it would withdraw its signature from the International Criminal Court. Do you have any comments?
Я, конечно, скептически относился к возможности.
I've been always skeptical when it came to a situation when somebody from the powers that be, given the current regime, could be brought to an international investigation at this court. But this withdrawal, I think it's pretty symbolic, because they understood that what they had done is already a crime if you apply the standards of international law.
In Syria, you mean?
Well, I mean Syria, I mean Ukraine, and I mean some other things. But it's important that it's finally dawned on them, and it's really important, and I would like to hope that these people will try during the time that they have left, they will try to minimize their negative inheritance, so that sooner or later they will be brought to trial, they will ask for some leniency, and the judges would be willing to meet their requests.
Last question. You were, as I said, an oligarch, someone who has been accused by many of trying to take advantage of a situation to make a lot of money, to take some of the natural resources, revenues out of Russia. And some are saying that the oligarchs probably hurt the rule of law, hurt democracy in Russia, and probably in a way paved the way for the regime that you're denouncing today, the regime of Vladimir Putin. Do you have some regrets?
Я хочу обратить ваше внимание
Well, I would like to draw your attention to
тех людей, которых вы называете
the situation that whom you call oligarchs in the 90s, with those who are close to President Putin now and what they do.
прийти, на мой взгляд,
I think you will come to an inevitable conclusion who actually the oligarchs are, who use the FSB and who try to cover their activities within Russia under what they do outside of Russia and through their adventures there, who kill people and journalists. So that's what people who are close to Putin now are doing, but not those people who have been portrayed as oligarchs in this myth. Undoubtedly, it's sad that the legislation that was adopted under Yeltsin paved the way for Vladimir Putin. But I think it's also unfair to say that the oligarchs actually did not rule the country under Yeltsin, but if you pretend that they did, you then blame them for not actually governing the country. Unfortunately, let me reiterate, Boris Yeltsin was an integral part of the Soviet system. And unfortunately, he did not see to the end how to build a democratic model of governing the state. And in the 90s, during the well-known events around the Russian parliament, he imposed the super president model, and he introduced the changes to the constitution. But he was a democratic person, so he didn't exploit it. But Vladimir Putin has been exploiting this. It's sad, and we should really rectify the situation.
Are you hoping to go back to Russia?
Sure, I will.
Okay, thank you very much, Mikhail Khodorkovsky, for all your time. And thank you for watching this edition of the interview here on France 24.